Thank you. Welcome back. And we've had quite a good speech from Nick and also Martin. There will now be an open question and answer session with the post office representative on stage. So we've got the guys here. In the first instance, please direct your question to Tracy Marshall, who will then allocate the question to one of the team on stage. Please, can we have the first question? I'm going to leave it to you, all right?
David Hartley, North West Region. At last week's Post Office conference, it was mentioned time and time again how everything takes time. Unfortunately, we as postmasters are not privileged to that time. We need action now. The banking increase is just a small part of what you could give to us. Fair share was set up a long time ago for third world countries. We need a fair share. And could I ask what you're actually going to do for us immediately, not in the future?
Thank you for your question. So I think as that question is probably more tailored towards remuneration and fair share, I'm going to direct the question to Martin Edwards. Martin.
Hi, is this mic working? So thanks for the question. Look, I mean, clearly this needs to be an ongoing process on remuneration in terms of what are we doing now, what are we doing very recently. Obviously, a few weeks ago, we announced a package of remuneration increases for the new financial year. That amounted to a 70% increase in REM for like volumes, particularly through banking and mails. And this will be an ongoing process. What we've committed to is to review remuneration annually. Each year, typically in March, ahead of the new financial year, we'll be looking at what are the priorities for REM, what's the financial position, and what we've put in place is a new structured dialogue with Callum and the team to make sure we're taking your priorities and feeding that into how we set REM. So it will be an annual ongoing process, and we'll commit to it on that basis.
Thank you, Martin. Next question.
Christine Donnelly, North Thames and East Anglia.
Hi, Christine.
Can I precede my question by saying I'm not talking about personalities here so much as roles? Can you provide any matter of policy either radically changed, abandoned or suggested as a result of intervention by the Postmaster Director or the Postmaster non-executive directors on the board?
Thank you very much. So Hitendra is with us today, and I don't know where he is. I could, somewhere there. Hi, Hitendra. So since Hitendra has been here, do you want to join me on stage, Hitendra, as Postmaster Director for the last couple of years? He's been instrumental, actually, in making quite a lot of changes, particularly with regards to how we engage with postmasters. I would draw out particularly the work that he's done to establish our regional forums, which are proving very, very popular and useful, where we get a lot of insights in. But I don't want to talk on behalf of Hitendra, so perhaps I can just invite him briefly to give a bit of an overview on what he's been involved in and how he's made a difference. Hitendra, would that be okay?
Yeah, sure, not a problem. Good afternoon, everybody, and I hope you had a very good session before. So, yeah, I mean, I just want to tell a bit brief about myself. So, this is Hitendra Chitirala. I'm Postmaster Director. I've been in this position for past 21 months. And yeah, it has been a very eye-opener for me for the first 6 to 8 months in the post office, how it works. And I was so puzzled, why is it taking so much time, and you know, why we're not getting immediate results. So there's been a lot of work has been done. For example, one of the biggest works I've done was the GFA. So I had to address the concerns raised with the CIJ. And Callum and myself have a lot of debates, a lot of things. And at last now we have arrived at a good GFA where I have put postmasters front. So that's one thing I have done. And another thing was with regard to regional forums, as Tracy was mentioned. So I was the architect of the regional forums, and now it's been given to the Sean Kerrison, who is head of the postmaster engagement, and it's been a very great success. I know there's a lot of work to be done. It's not yet in the right shape, but it's evolving. So we had the first lot of people in the first 12 months, and the second lot of people have been recently appointed. So there's a lot of work being done. It's no way means we are replacing NFSP. A lot of people have got concerns that we are replacing NFSP. No, it's like a double barrel gun with NFSP and the regional forums. So you got, because NFSP has got limited resources, so we are trying to reach out to the postmasters so they can highlight their concerns. So we got about 144 postmasters active on the regional forums. So we are hearing from 144 postmasters different views. Thank you.
Thank you. A couple of other things I'd add to your question, which is a great one. So all three of those individuals have come in to work with us with the idea that they challenge us more, and we can listen to them and they can give insight into what it really means to run branches out there, which will help us drive improvements. Hitendra has been slightly modest. He's also been instrumental in helping me and my team change the onboarding processes. Now, I've had a few conversations with a couple of you actually over the break, and whilst they're not perfect, Hitendra has been really, really key in making some very crucial changes to that, speeding it up, making sure it's more automated, making sure it's simpler. There's another example that I wonder whether Martin might just quickly like to talk about, and this is more around Saf and Elliot in their non-executive postmaster roles, really challenging us on drop and collect. Martin.
Yes, so one of the big debates we've been having in recent months is our approach to rollout of drop and collect. So drop and collect, as I think you'll all know, this is a new format, particularly focused on parcels pick-up and drop-off. It's our opportunity to really respond to what customers want in terms of more convenience for locations and really what the competition are doing. They've absolutely saturated urban areas. They now have 3 times as many locations as we do in urban areas. So obviously from a customer perspective and a commercial perspective, we're keen to roll out more of these locations, get them closer to customers. But we know we need to balance that with what does that mean for existing branches? How close do we place these drop and collect to existing branches? So we had what was frankly a very robust debate with the board last December about our location policy for drop and collect. Fair to say, Saf and Elliot were particularly vocal in that meeting and I think useful input, and that did get us to a change in approach and a more cautious approach, I'd say, to how we roll out drop and collect, being more careful about how close we go to existing branches. So I think that's a good example, and it works alongside our ongoing engagement with the NFSP. So we also have a regular forum with Callum and team on drop and collect rollouts. We've introduced, committed to use the existing review panel process with NFSP. So I think these channels for postmaster input, Saf, Elliot, Hitendra and NFSP, I think are all starting to work together really well in my perspective.
Thank you, Martin. Where's the mic next?
Alan Knight, Kent, South East Region.
Hi.
Question for PRL. When MBIT actually arrives, we were all hoping to see it here this week, but obviously it was pulled at the last moment. I'm responsible for 13 branches, of which there's considerable costs, certainly with staff. When MBIT actually arrives, who's going to be covering the costs for the training of those staff when it actually does appear on the system? We're all supposed to have it by 2025. Now, on average, it costs me anything between £1,500 to £2,000 to train a new member of staff on the Horizon system. That's taking their salary into consideration, my manager's salary into consideration, who's training that person. Now, I have 11 members of staff. Am I expected to cover the costs of their training? Or is Post Office going to put a package together for postmasters so we actually have some kind of finance put in place to train the staff members? There's no point going on the hub. Staff members in their own time probably won't do that. We can all possibly go down to a hotel and see MBIT up and running, invite the staff along in their time. I don't think so. They will want payment for that. Who's going to cover that cost?
Okay, thank you for your question. So So firstly, we were due to have somebody from our IT team here today, but sadly they are unwell, so we don't have any IT colleagues here. But let me start by saying that we are, first of all, really carefully planning the transition from Horizon to NBIT and the support that you would all get, not just from a training perspective, but wider than that too. We're still developing our plans for training, which we know will be a mix of e-learning, of course, virtual training sessions, which might be held by postmasters or might be chaired by colleagues, and also the opportunity to go to events and also classrooms as we have now. So it's going to be a very blended mix because we want to make sure that that training is suited to different needs. You've all got different training needs, right? And all of your colleagues in your branch will have different training needs. We are still working through the details, though, as to who will pay for what and how that training will take shape. But let me assure you that I hear you loud and clear. You're not the first person to ask me that question. And we know that the training needs to be, we need to make sure that every member who's going to operate the new system will be confident in it and competent moving forward. And that will take time, won't it? That will take time to make sure that you understand the details of the new system. So leave that one with me. I can't make any commitments now, but I hear you loud and clear. Thank you.
Good morning, John Follenfant, South West Region. Hi. We've talked about banking hubs and the expansion of banking hubs across the nation and the plans to have, I forgot what we're talking about, nearly 100 or something by the end of the year. We've also talked about the importance of mails and bringing on board new mails partners. Are we planning, or is the Post Office Limited planning to consider new models of post offices? So we're going to have banking hubs. Will we also be considering having parcel hubs across the front of our shops in the future?
Thank you. It's a great question. So we've got a few people here, actually, who might be able to help with that answer. Do you want to say something on banking hubs to start with, Ross? Thank you.
Morning, everyone. My name's Ross. So I think just starting on banking hubs, and I'll pass on to others for the second part of that. You're right. There's about 52 hubs that have been announced by Link. So Link you all know them as the provider for ATMs at the moment, but they have a second role now in assessing communities for cash needs, and they make recommendations off the back of that, whether that is a banking hub or, secondly, introducing enhancements in local existing cash services. And so there's two channels really of work going on there, and what I'm encouraging is absolutely banking hubs. You should work with us on banking hubs, Link, but actually there's an existing network already of post offices. You'd be far better off, I think, spending your money investing in our local branches. And we've got 16 pilots going on at the moment where the banks are investing directly into local branches where the bank has left, and we're now picking up that extra demand. And my hope is that we'll prove that model over these next few months, and it will set out a mechanism for getting bank investment into local post offices to support banking transactions. And that's things like automation, that's things like looking at priority banking counters, refreshing some of the look and feel that I think the banks should be investing in as they decide to leave town. On the banking hubs, the banks are quite precious about these at the moment. So you'll see they are set up as standalone sites. Fine, I can see the value in that. My personal view is it'd be far, far better in many communities to co-locate a banking hub with a post office. They're not very keen on that at the moment. We have now got agreement to do a pilot this year where we will co-locate. So you will walk in, you'll turn left for post office, you'll turn right for banking hub. And I hope to prove that concept is far more sustainable and far better going forward. And I'm afraid it's baby steps with the banks. If you'd gone back 2 years ago and said, would you do banking hubs? They would have all said no. And there's now 50 announced and many, many more to come. My hope is over the next few years we'll get to a place where actually the default's not a standalone location. It's, where possible, co-locating with our existing branches. So back to your wider point, do I think there's an opportunity there around the format and how we do that? Yes, I do. But I think it's just step by step with the banks to get them to that place.
Thanks, Ross. And Martin, do you want to add anything from an overall format proposition?
Yeah, I mean, I think what I'd say is generally we are looking to evolve our format propositions to respond to changing market circumstances. I think, candidly, we probably had a decade or so where we really just had the same one-size-fits-all solutions with Mains Locals Outreach. What we've had in the last 24 months now is 2 far more targeted segmented offerings in the form of Bank Hub and Drop and Collect. So I think you can take that as a sign of us moving the times and wanting to do more in that space. Specifically on your question, would we introduce a further mails-only proposition, kind of doing the full range of send mails but only mails? I could see that there could be a case for that in some locations, particularly some city centre locations where there's a lot of SME sellers with large parcels volumes, but perhaps less need for banking because the banks are still open. So I think we'd be open-minded to that, but I think that, you know, as always, we're responding to what customers need and what postmasters in the area want. So if postmasters in the area would prefer to do a mails-only proposition, it's certainly something we'd be open to.
Thanks, Martin. Hi.
Good morning, Tracy. Hi.
Hello again.
Here we go. John Shepherd, Hull and York Branch, North East Regional Council. Just following up on the back of Alan's excellent question regarding NBIT, I've got certain concerns. Can you actually tell us why NBIT weren't here today? Because it was disappointing that wasn't communicated to us beforehand. My general feeling is that NBIT itself is too bitty. Many people in this room have contributed to feedback sessions and various things on various different aspects, and I'd really like some sort of reassurance that Frankenstein isn't actually building a monster here. Where are we now? Have the timescales changed? And what's happening next, please? Thank you.
Thank you, John. Martin, do you want to take that one?
Thank you, John, for the question. And apologies that you know, the NBIT team weren't here. We need to take that away and work with Callum and the team to understand how we can make that better, because we don't want you to feel like you're not coming on the journey, because we know that's super important. So I'll make sure that we do a better job on that. I think in terms of you know, where we are with it, we're in pilot at the moment, and we're learning a lot. As you know, when you're in pilot, that's where you do all your learning, all your studying. And I think Andy's question earlier about, you know, what's it going to cost? Well, we're learning all of that. You know, how long is the training going to take? The interpretation of that training, you know, the receipt to the training, and looking at how e-learning and that module works. So we're going to make sure that we do a really good job on that. I mean, in terms of the timelines, we're working to some tight timelines. But at the moment, we're not going to create a beast. We're using still 200 to 300 postmasters across the network for regular feedback. We're not going solo on this. And I think it's really important to note that we need your help and need your guidance. As you can imagine in testing, you pick up a few bugs along the way. That's why you test. And so, you know, we're very keen as a business to make sure that as we road test NBIT, which we are excited about, we think it's going to be a great replacement. It's faster, it's quicker, it's intuitive. And the pilots that we've got at the moment are showing that. And the postmasters and the colleagues involved are giving us great feedback. So to say to you, I think that the takeaway is that we probably need to be more fluid in keeping you on the front foot, John, and that will probably be the same for all postmasters, and we need to take that away. I think that's a clear next step, that you want to be on the journey, and maybe we're not doing that as quickly as we should at the moment. But let's be clear, we are only in pilot in a very small number of branches across the UK at the moment, but obviously our future plans, we can come back and talk to you more about that.
Next question.
Hello.
Hi.
Hi. Thanks, Tracy. Jitesh Chowder, Birmingham branch, Midland region. Drop and collect. I've got one of the offices just been opened very close to mine, and I can't see how that opening near me is not going to hemorrhage my business and my investment. It's going to cannibalize everything that we've worked very hard for. And I have asked the questions many times, so I'm asking you now. How are you going to measure what your criteria is, and how you're going to measure the business that will be taken away from me? Because I'm a very proactive postmaster. I'm always trying to work and increase my business. So no matter your salary is going down and what you actually offer us, I'm working hard to build that business up somehow. Now, on the other hand, if you've got another office which is right close to me, opening up, and they will take business because you're going to give them a logo which says post office, which is I've worked hard to get that logo on my account, on my fascia. Now, if that logo is now offered to a local or drop and collect, I can't see the distinguish from a local customer who will see that logo and say, right, there's another post office, I'll go there. He can't see the difference whether he comes to my office or goes to that office there. Come 6 months down the line, you will have done your research, and you will come to me and you will say to me, Jitesh, I don't see there is a problem because your business has still gone up. That's because of my own work. I've actually built that business. And like I say, I'm a proactive person, and there's all postmasters here are working hard to achieve that. How can you come back to me? How can you come back to me 6 months' time and tell me there's no problem? That person hasn't done that much business. Those could be my customers that have gone there because they've gone for convenience. I need that sorted, and I need an answer. How are you going to measure this?
Okay, thank you very much. Very passionate. Martin, you again.
So thanks for the question. So first of all, I want to just recognise the concern about this. As I referred to earlier, we've been having very robust debates internally and with the NFSP and with the Postmaster Directive. So this is a topic we are on to and do want to handle very carefully. So firstly, to explain what we're trying to do with drop and collect. It is a very targeted proposition. It is only parcels pick up and drop off. To give a sense, that accounts for about 5% of remuneration of a typical mains. So it's not a broad-ranged offering. It is only for those product lines. And why we've introduced that is we know the competition are taking that business away from us. They have got, as I mentioned earlier, 3 times as many locations in urban areas now than there are post offices. And if we're not responding to that customer need for convenience, it is just going to go to the competition, and that's happening already. So we do need to be able to respond to that. But clearly we need to do that in a balanced way. So wherever we place drop and collect, it is targeted. We're looking at what the customer need is, what the competition is, and what's the existing post office provision. Specifically in terms of how we measure this, so we are monitoring the transactions both for drop and collect branches and nearby branches on an ongoing basis post-launch. And we're comparing that against control groups, understanding what's going on with the broader market trends and is there a difference to the nearby branches. As I mentioned earlier, we've also committed now to working with NFSP to make use of the review panel process. So if postmasters are concerned about the impact it's having on that branch, it can be referred to that review panel with NFSP. So you've got my commitment for us to continue to look at this very closely and to measure these impacts carefully.
Thank you, Martin. Hi.
Hi, I'm Paul McBain's Scotland branch. My question is around the new models. We talked maybe a couple of years ago about the new models being like a pay zone or drop and collect locals mains, now bank hubs. At the time I questioned why we never had outreach services there. Since 2008 I've been running outreach services, and in the last year there's 2 offices around my area that's closed. But on asking the question of post office that I have provision and I have space that I could adequately put outreach in there, there has been no appetite to do such things. So although the post office is closed, we are not looking to facilitate another office. So is that looking at the demise of outreach? Is there no need for outreach going forward because we have the new model of drop and collect, or am I just assuming nothing? Thank you.
Thank you. It's a good question, and Martin's already poised, look, with his mic.
Hi, Paul. Good to see you. So outreach undoubtedly continues to be part of our format mix. I think the numbers would suggest outreach certainly isn't in demise. Over the past decade, they've doubled from about 1,000 to nearly 2,000 now. So, frankly, they've been the growth proposition for the past decade. I actually think we've probably, from a customer perspective, we've probably got more than we need. We do have outreach out there which are serving very low customer numbers, and the cost per customer served isn't great. So we need to think about outreach definitely does have a role, but we need to do it in the right location. So I think where outreach plays a role is if there's no suitable retail in the area to host a post office service, and there's no other suitable post office provision in the area, that's where outreach is needed. So we will continue to open outreach in those locations. What I think we will be doing differently is, to some extent, we've been using outreach over the past decade to close the gap on network numbers, not really responding to customer demand, really closing the gap to network numbers. I think drop and collect gives us a more customer-focused way of doing that, a more cost-effective way of doing that, and ultimately that means we've got more resources to recycle back into remuneration for postmasters. So still part of the format mix, but part of a more segmented overall offering.
Thank you. Not a silly question at all.
Vince Malone, Tenby Branch, Wales. We are currently kings of cash in many towns across the country. Banks are closing, everyone's looking at us. It was alluded to earlier that travel money is increasing. I want us to be far more aggressive with the way that we promote travel money. I want us to be aggressive with our pricing structure. I want to be aggressive in our advertising. I want us to be kings of travel money as well. Can you give me that commitment that we are going to do something that's very post office-like and be aggressive, be forthright, and demand that we get this money from those customers that really want to come and serve us, because we're in the right place, we're open at the right times, and we have the cash, we have the currency that they want. I just need the backing from Post Office to be able to do that.
Thank you. Great question. Laura, would you like to answer that, if you don't mind?
Yes, please. So, hi everyone, I'm Laura. I am incoming head of travel money at the Post Office. So I welcome your passion. And I would like to say yes, that we will go after this business. It's critical to the success of your businesses and our businesses. It is a very competitive market. It's going to be more competitive this year than it was last year, as all the competition that didn't come back straight away start to come back. But yes, we are going after it. Our travel campaign launches today. Lots of our colleagues are out in your branches and across the network today, ensuring that you've got everything you need to deliver a successful summer. We continue to look at the rates. I hear the rates question loud and clear across the room at feedback sessions. It underpins our business. It also underpins everyone else's business. So what we've got to be clear on is we've got about 30% market share, as has been suggested around the room. We have got that. We are the market leader. If we start to race to the bottom with our rates, they will go lower. That is in no one's interest to do so. So we've got a clear strategy. We continually look at rates. But to answer your question without banging on too long, travel is really, really important. It starts today, our summer season. We've had a really good start to the year, and we are really optimistic about the future this year.
Thank you, Laura. Thank you for the question.
Parimal Bhatt, London region. I got a couple of questions. First is for drop and collect. You guys saying that you are considering when with the NFSP, how is the drop and go, which area located? Is question from North London region. That's in one area, that's nearly one main office, 5 drop and go open. And that time you are now promising you are reimbursing that or value how much business losses. That same concept 2 years before I talk about a white space. So you are just planning one by one to hit the main high street branches who have more investment in the businesses. They are losing their incomes. And now one by one, first is white space. Now their project drop it out. Now it's become next name drop and go. So what is going to be like drop and collect? And my second question is for the banking team. We don't have like Bank of Ireland's not giving any good business to us. We have collaboration with all the high street banks. Why we don't have any savings product or something good range for the banking sides? We can't pay the bank gyro or nothing in the post office. So nearly branch closed for banks like Lloyds and everything, and customers coming for their credit card bills or some things like pay their HMRC tax. Sorry, we can't help you. You have to go to your bank. Then they say, when my branch closed, you put your leaflet, we provide services in post office. Come to me. And when I come to you, you haven't got the services to provide me. Please, thanks.
Thank you. So 2 questions there. To Martin first and then to Ross.
So on the drop and collect question, very happy to look at the specific area you're referring to. We can perhaps take that offline. But more generally, in terms of, is drop and collect just a renaming of new network locations, NNLs? It's not. I mean, actually, it's a really important distinction. So before we had drop and collect, the only way we had to respond to customer demand from all locations was to open locals. As you all know, locals involves the full mails range, it involves banking and other product lines. And I think the clear feedback from existing postmasters was that did create a greater threat to their existing business. With drop and collect, it's far more targeted, particularly on that parcels market, just for pick up and drop off, not for selling parcels. So it gives us a better way of balancing what customers need, fending off what the competition are doing, but also protecting the interests of existing postmasters. So I think it's a really important change from what we previously did with the NNLs.
Good question. I think more broadly, you're sort of saying beyond core cash, you know, what are the other things we could be doing? And I mean, these are topics that we talk to the banks a lot about. So credit card bill payments. I mean, I think everyone I speak to when I go into branch talks about. The customers are asking about that. It is something we can do. It's something the banks have to sign up to. They have been very reluctant to do that. We are hoping that through the Banking Hub initiative, we will be able to try and drive that. So it's all well and good creating a banking hub, but if you can't do a lot of the things you do in a bank, I think it undermines the proposition. So we're trying to use that as a way of saying, well, actually, we can do credit card bill payments. It is the same Horizon terminal within a bank hub. If we can get it going in a bank hub, we can get it going across the network. The other thing we're looking at is plugging the gaps. We have gaps. We don't have Monzo on. We still don't have nationwide deposits on. So I'm in, I hope, final stage conversations now with Monzo. It's the third time I've gone around with them. I'm very much hoping this year we will get there. When legislation comes in, I think it will force nationwide to come on board for deposits. They are currently saying they will not, but I think they will be forced. And I know there's a big gap that many of your customers are struggling with. So we're trying to fill out some of those parts of it, and then looking at how we build on some of those propositions. And a lot of the challenges we've had with deposit limits, we're looking at how we can build on the product set to try and address some of those going forward. So there is work going on there to build that out, but it will be incremental with the banks.
Thank you, Ross. Thanks for your question.
Afternoon, Tracy.
Hello, Tim.
It's me,
Hello,
Tim
Ian.
Boothman, North West Region. Could someone from the Post Office please clarify the position of the restrictions policy in regard to drop and collect contracts, please?
Thank you, Tim.
So the default position on restrictions for drop and collect is the same for branches. So we do expect retailers taking on the Post Office brand to commit to taking parcels from the Post Office rather than competitors. So that's the default position. However, what we do have is a temporary waiver for new drop and collect locations on a case-by-case basis. And this recognises the fact that really all of the good retailers out there who don't already have a post office, we know full well all of them have got parcels propositions. If they don't have a competing parcels proposition, they're probably not a retailer we want to work with. So we need to balance, how do we get our foot in the door of those retailers, bring them into the post office network and get them to drop the competition. So we do recognise, in many cases, we can't expect those retailers to drop the competing proposition straight away. The drop and collect needs to prove its worth. So that's why we do have this targeted time-limited waiver in place for drop and collect. What we won't do is let retailers take on new competing propositions, what we've got the post office brands. So it's a kind of one-way process, and it is strictly time-limited.
Dhaval Gosalia from North Thames and East Anglia Regional Council. Last week's conference, Callum raised a serious concern for postmasters. In last 3 years, the postmaster's remuneration per pound has gone down from 49 pence to 45 pence to 42 pence. This shouldn't go down, it should go up. And this must be fixed now, please. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you. Do you want to say anything, Martin? Martin again.
I won't need to go to the gym tonight. I'm getting plenty of exercise. Nick committed very clearly last November to grow remuneration as a share of income over the long term. We are still committed to that. I think you've heard that reinforced very clearly from the Minister, Nick, Martin this morning. So there is remuneration and branch profitability as our overall priority. Year to year, you will see changes. Some years it will go up, some years it will go down, and that's really down to the changing product mix. So what we saw in last year's financial performance is As you all know, mail's underperformed, but our platform products, our non-branch platform products, overperformed. Inevitably, that does impact the share of income going to postmasters. What that did do is give us some profits, which you then recycle into the one-off increases and into other investment in branches. So year to year, you will see fluctuations, but over the long term, we are committed to growing the share of income going to postmasters. Obviously, to facilitate that, that means we need to be generating profits elsewhere in platform products and reducing our own costs. So it's an ongoing process. And I would encourage you need to hold us to account to making that progress over the long term.
And I'd just add to that as well, I'm sure the NFSP will also be holding us to account. Martin's already touched on the regular meetings we now have with them on remuneration, and they will continue, the first of which was a couple of weeks ago. Thank you.
Bhavna Desai, Northwest Region.
Hi, Bhavna.
Hi. Every time we talk about setting relationship and postmasters and post office engagement, you always bring in the three NEDs on the board. Now, having the NED, I've got nothing against my colleagues. They must be doing very hard and we're putting our interest in front of you, that's fine. But are the people who are on board, can they do everything freely? Are they not bound by Companies Act, where a connected person is only allowed to say so much? They can't vote. They have to, obviously, whatever is in their interest, they're not allowed to vote on that. So how having those people on board is benefiting us?
Okay, thank you.
And whilst I'm here, could you also tell me that the government subsidy that comes to Post Office Limited over all these years, how much of that is going to sub-postmasters?
Thank you very much. So we have both of our, so just to be clear, we have the three individuals you're talking about, two of them, which is Safi Ismail and Elliot Jacobs. They're here in the room today, by the way. I can see them at the back. And they are non-executive directors on our Post Office board. Hitendra, who you've heard from earlier, sitting just here, is an employee of Post Office as Postmaster Director, as well as being a Postmaster too. Now, I can't talk on their behalf as to how they feel that they're able to input and challenge, etc., and make a difference. But let me tell you that all of them, in my experience, and obviously I work more closely with Hitendra on a day-to-day basis, and boy, do they challenge us. And I think I've heard Nick say that, boy, do they challenge the board members as well in terms of their views. They are really genuinely inputting into what we do, providing advice, challenging us when we get things wrong, giving opinions on what might be the best course of action. And I shared a few examples earlier on. So yes, of course, they will have contracts with us. Of course they will, as board directors and also as employees. But it's really not stopping them from saying what they feel, from stating their mind, and from genuinely influencing what we do. It wouldn't be fair of me not to provide the opportunity to ask Safi or Elliot if they want to add to that, but that's my experience, absolutely. I can see Elliot's got up. Elliot. I think there's a mic close by.
Hello, thank you. We could both say things, but Saf said he pushed me up, so firstly, to your point around conflict. So yes, without doubt, there are conversations had at board where, as a postmaster, I would benefit from a change in a policy or whatever. The whole essence of our job is to do exactly that. Now, there is a fine line between what we can and can't do in terms of a vote on something that we would have a benefit for. The chair who was outgoing and the chair we have now is acutely aware of those conflicts, and in situations where we are conflicted, what has happened is that Saf and I have been able to stay in the room, be in the discussion, be very vocal in driving the conversation and sharing our experience, and making clear where we would stand if we had a vote. That has definitely impacted the decision-making cycle and the decisions made. I don't believe, I wasn't there before I was there, but I'm told it's a very different type of board now we're there. It has more real-world experience than it's ever had. It has more challenge and debate before it makes decisions that don't fully understand the impact of the front line. And most importantly, I think, we can't win every argument, but as Tracy says, they're damn sure clear when we're not happy. And we are really driving change. It's slow. This organisation is too slow at change. It's not enough. It has taken Saf and I 2 years to work out who, what, and when things get done. And there are so many opportunities for this organisation to work with us all to improve the way it works. There is so much knowledge in our postmaster community. And I think over the last 2 years, I have seen a change in the way they see us. The next step is to put their money where their mouth is. We need more money to do the job, and I think it's beginning to be heard, but the work is not done. But to your point, yes, we are making a difference, not in enough places and not fast enough.
Thank you, Elliot. And Bhavna, just moving on to your next question on subsidy. Nick's going to take that, actually.
No, I was going to just actually back up the comments that Elliot very well articulated there. It was no accident when I suggested to the Secretary of State that we change the Constitution and we bring 2 new post office directors onto the main board. It was very, very obvious to me when I joined in 2019 that there was a fundamental lack of transparency, there was a lack of operational rigour around the boardroom table, and there was a real need for the board to be held to account for operational issues that are happening here and now. And what Saf and Elliot bring is that needle, that edge, that detail that can be very, very uncomfortable. So on their behalf, I'm put under a lot of operational scrutiny, which is absolutely how it should be. And that's how and why we wanted it this way. I've got another board director of mine in Harry Garrar over here from Nicer Days. It's really important that people who are on the ground, doing the job day in, day out, have a voice around the boardroom table. And I can assure you, when it's uncomfortable, then we know that we're making some progress. And both of them have been extremely good at that. Whether that's on REM, whether that's on operational change, whether that's on the practicalities of how to deliver MBIT, whether that's just very, very specific feelings around how postmasters and postmistresses are feeling. They do that extremely well, and I think it's a great development for this business that you've got those 2 on the board. Absolutely.
Do you want to touch on the subsidy question from Bhavna as well? Is that okay?
Yeah, sure. I'll touch on the subsidy question. This is a topic of much debate, and it's a topic that both the Martins and I spend our time thinking about. We get £50 million worth of subsidy on a yearly basis from the government, and anybody who's had a chance to have a look back over the last 6 or 7 years will see that subsidy has continued to diminish quite markedly. It's in the report and accounts, you can see it from there. We have some debate around what the real cost of the network is in terms of running that subsidy for the government. I reckon it's somewhere between 85 and 100. Others have said it's over 100, and it's a bit of work that we need to do. But the point of that observation is we do not get enough subsidy for the demands that the government place upon us in terms of the profitability of the network, the size and scale of the network, having a post office in every single constituency. That is a topic of serious debate that we will have more conversations on over the coming weeks and months. And just for everybody's benefit in here, you heard me allude when I was speaking, and I'd say this if the minister was here or if he wasn't here. We've got some pretty tricky conversations around what are the core requirements for the network, what are the core requirements for the business in terms of funding. You'll know in the last round of basically the last spending review that we had, we asked for 415 million. The government turned around and gave us 205 million. And eventually, after 7 months of negotiation, we settled at 330. Still not enough. The difference between 415 and 330 is marked. And that's what we did on a very sort of low-level basis. We said that we thought was the basic requirement to run the organisation was 415, and as I say, we got 330. That debate is happening again now. We have a very big board meeting, and Saf and Elliot will be on it on June the 6th. We'll talk about the funding requirements for the business, and we're scurrying around. Many of the people on the platform today, myself and others, Saf, Elliot, to make sure that we have a coherent funding request of the government, and that will be awkward, and that will be very, very difficult. But be assured, we will fight for this, and Saf and Elliot in particular will, because they've got a very, very on-the-ground feeling of what's going on, and we'll make sure that in that sort of post-June period, we'll be able to come back and say how successful it was. So, in essence, the process works. June the 6th, we have a board meeting. The operational and executive team will present back to the board what we think is the requirement, and we'll be going through a whole series of engagements with lots of different stakeholders over the next 4 weeks. Once we get agreement from the board, then it's incumbent upon me and the chairman and others to go into government and say, our board recognise that this is a bare, basic requirement for the business for the next 1, 2, 3 years. And then we had that very, very tricky negotiation. The reason I said it won't happen overnight is because it won't. There's a 400 billion hole in the government finances at the moment. So we've got to be quite thoughtful about how we go about it. But getting access to the Treasury, getting access to folks so they really understand, why the business needs the investment it needs is the core job. And that's what we'll be doing broadly over the next 2 to 3 months.
Thanks, Nick, and thanks, Bhavna, for the question. Now, I'm getting the signal that that's all we have time for questions. Am I handing back to you, Callum? To you, Sam. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you very much, Tracy and the team. You've answered the question. So can we give them another round of applause? I'd like to ask Callum to come up and say a few words.
Yeah. So hi, I appreciate everybody's looking for lunch. I will be very brief, which for me is rather unusual. It's a little bit of an advert, actually, to be honest. One of the things that was brought up quite a lot this morning was in relation to the Horizon Inquiry. One of the things that's about the Horizon Inquiry is that a lot of people had, obviously, their lives utterly ruined and devastated, and we all know about that. So the question is, what is the NFSP going to do about it? What are we going to do to actually help you, our colleagues, and our colleagues out in the wider network to ensure that nothing like that can happen again? So I had a look at what we do as far as supporting and helping colleagues. And one of the things that actually I started with Nilesh Joshi back in 2019 was an advocacy project. And we're now in a place, with the help of Keith and Wendy, to actually launch that. And what we're looking for is experienced postmasters within the branch and regional secretary network to actually help us. We will train you, we will give you additional training so that you can actually help and support a colleague at their greatest time of need. Because if there is a breach in contract in any way, shape or form, we want to make sure that that is investigated properly and they get the best representation that they possibly can so that we can protect them in the best way that we possibly can. We do deal with cases, and we do deal with some very, very difficult and challenging and sad cases. So it's very sensitive. It's not something that we will talk about publicly for obvious reasons out of respect for the individuals involved. But if there are any colleagues out there who would like to help us, please see Keith and Wendy and be part of a team, a small team it will be, and it's very important it's a small team, to make sure actually that we can play our part to ensure that nothing like this can ever happen again.